great to have you with us. This is Paula Chenoweth. I will be facilitating the webinar, and Professor Ellen Grant is the facilitator of the webinar. With us this evening, we have Sheri Waters, who is a Principal HR Analyst at Butte County, California. And Sheri, I'd like to read a little bit about you. What I'm going to do is give you presenter rights, and you can set up your PowerPoint while I read a little bit about you. Sheri has 15 years of professional HR experience, including recruitment and selection, employee relations, labor negotiations, grievance and mediation preparation, arbitration research and documentation, job analysis, development of job descriptions, classification and compensation studies, training, leave administration and compliance, personnel and memorandum of understanding interpretation, state and federal law interpretation and implementation, analyzing and writing contract language, and providing counseling and support to departments regarding all personnel issues. A lot of background, Sheri. She conducts organizational studies, collects and analyzes statistical data, summarizes results, and makes recommendations. She recommends and implements changes to existing policies and procedures, and provides training to department personnel regarding policy and procedure. She also conducts new hire orientation and additional personnel trainings covering a variety of HR topics. Sheri works closely with county employees to coordinate medical leaves and employment issues while maintaining the highest degree of confidentiality. She has also been a consultant for 2 years with CPS, which includes conducting HR Academy classes in recruitment and selection and exam development, as well as conducting classification and compensation studies and executive recruitment. Sheri's going to be covering, her topic tonight is job search. And if you have any questions with regards to the Chicago Schools Career Center, we do have Aisha with us tonight. However, we're not sure she'll be able to stay the entire time. So if there are specific questions with regards to the Chicago School Career Services, we will take those and make sure they get to the appropriate contact. So without further ado, if you're ready, Sheri, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invite. My bio sounds kind of boring. I hope we're going to have more fun than that today. I am happy to be here. One of the things that I like doing the most in my job is recruitment and selection. I think it is really interesting. I know you folks are excited to learn some pointers, some ideas about the recruitment process, some do's and some don'ts, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you have. Hopefully everybody can see my PowerPoint here. Looks good to me. Paula?
Sorry, I had myself on mute. Yes, I can see it. Ready, set, go.
Okay, excellent. All right. Let's see if it's going to move through. One of the things regarding looking for a job when you're really searching, I think confidence is really the key. It can be such a daunting process. Folks are scared, they're nervous, they're afraid they're not going to be able to find something. Again, have confidence. There is a lot of jobs out there. You just have to know where to look and how to find them and how to present your skills. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. So that's one of the things I want you to remember. You can do it, absolutely. Some of the goals and expectations that you want to think about when you're looking for a job is that looking for a job is actually a job in itself. It's not something that you're going to do for a couple of minutes a day, once a week. A job is not going to come find you. Very rarely does someone come and knock on your door and say, hey, I have a job for you. Would you like to have it? You are going to have to be proactive in looking for the job and finding exactly where those are. One of the things that you can do is to develop a system for finding work. I strongly suggest having some type of a calendar, putting yourself on a schedule. For example, in the morning you get up, you read ads, you get on the internet, you search for jobs, you respond by phone, you may do some networking calls. In the afternoon, you may do some research, more research, and then you're also going to maybe attend some things like job fairs, that type of thing. So come up with an actual calendar, a system that you have in place so that every day you're working on trying to find a job. Also, if you can clearly picture the type of job that you want, you're more likely to be successful. I've attended a lot of job fairs with folks, and they will come up to me and say, hey, I have a master's in psychology, or I have a bachelor's in social work. What can I be? It's important that you have an idea of exactly what you're looking for and what you want to be. That will assist you in your job search. All of the folks on this presentation have a higher level of education. So we've got bachelor's, we've got master's degrees, we've got PhDs, and then we've also got, I'm sure, a lot of folks that have great experience in addition to those education. You've got that package. Now you need to ask yourself, where do I look in order to find a job with my type of background, my educational background, my experience? There are many industries that you can look at. Some of those, such as local, state, and federal government, hire lots of different levels of positions that require education as well as experience. You can also look at local colleges and universities, healthcare and mental health services, and also things that you might not think of: business, sales, marketing, advertising. There are many, many industries, many areas as to where you can look for jobs. I mentioned that you really do want to know what type of job that you have. What is your target job? What industry are you looking at? As far as some of the educational components that come out of this college, certainly you've got psychologists. You could be looking for openings for clinical, educational, or forensics. Lots of jobs for counselors in both public and private sector. School counselors, employment, mental health counselors, public health, drug and alcohol, rehabilitation, and also some vocational counselors. Those have a myriad of different types of qualifications, some with advanced education, some with not, some with experience, and some with not. Also, we've got our social workers. There is a big demand now for social workers in both adult, children, for the elderly, and also for disabled. Additional types of jobs that you can look with those types of degrees, things such as a human resources manager, store and project managers, and then also some public relations positions, even possibly sales, advertising representatives as well. When you have a formal education in areas such as psychology, that type of thing, that will blanket over a lot of different jobs in different industries, and it will allow you to qualify for many more things than you think that you might be able to. So what I strongly suggest is to develop a list of specific job titles and potential industries that you want to target, and you can add that to your system that you're developing to actually find work. So a couple of questions to get us going. True or false? Advanced education will allow you to start at the top, and you will not need to look at entry or journey level positions. Do we think that is true or false? It's definitely false. There sometimes is a misconception that if you have an advanced degree that you're automatically going to be able to land a top level job. Many agencies, many companies do want you to work your way up. So when you're looking for jobs, you may want to look at some entry level and some journey level positions. Look for companies that have some potential growth. Government agencies, state agencies, that type of thing really do like to grow their folks from those entry journey level positions up to the higher positions. The advantage that you have with the advanced degree is that you will be able to qualify for those upper level positions when your background, your experience is ready for those. True or false? If there are several applicants for one position, the person with the best qualifications generally gets the job offer. What do you think? you think that's true. It makes sense that the person with the best qualifications would get the job offer, but that's not always the case. Employers are looking for many things when they're doing interviewing for vacant positions. They're looking for things such as fit, and that can be fit into a company, fit into a department, or fit into a particular team. They're also looking for short-term or long-term goals. And sometimes they're looking for specific skill sets. So while you may go in and believe that you are the very best qualified candidate, and maybe you are, sometimes the fit may not be right and you may not be chosen. So you have to keep the confidence up, keep applying. At some point you are going to be the best fit for someone. True or false? The Human Resource Office does all the hiring and firing, so that's the first place to contact if you're looking for a job. Many people do go directly to Human Resources of different agencies or companies, and while Human Resources does manage generally the recruitment process, sometimes they're not in the know of all of the jobs that are going on. A lot of times that is handled internally by department personnel, by managers. A lot of the advertising and stuff can be done separate outside of Human Resources. So I think it's really important to go directly to the company that you are interested in looking for employment with. A face-to-face is always a good thing. People will say, well, they don't have any openings, they're not doing any advertising. That doesn't necessarily matter. Go in, introduce yourself, tell them you're looking for a job, you're just checking in. A lot of it is all about follow-up. If you have a dream place that you really want to work, even though they're not hiring, continue to go in. Continue to check in with them. At some point they will be hiring. They will likely remember you. They will likely have your resume, your application on file, whatever it is, and then you may get a call at that point. So don't just rely on human resource offices. You need to have that face-to-face contact with folks in different agencies that you're interested in applying at. Any questions so far?
No questions posted yet. Sheri, thank you.
Okay, continue on. True or false? The most effective way to get job interviews is the old adage, see a guy who knows a guy, a technique known as networking. Networking is probably one of the most important things that you can do when you're job searching. What are some of the benefits of networking? Networking can help you research career ideas. It can also help you identify new possible career paths that maybe you hadn't thought of. It will also help you understand more about particular occupational areas. If you sit down and talk to someone that does that job, you can ask very particular questions. You can find out if you truly are interested in doing that type of work. It's a much better way to learn about a job than just reading a job description. You can also benefit from networking because you can learn from the experience of others, those folks that actually do those jobs. Networking can also build up a team of people who can support you in your career process. It also helps with identifying particular people who could act maybe as a mentor for you. Having a mentor can really be helpful in certain career situations. Networking can also help you find out about jobs and other opportunities that may not be advertised. It goes back to that whole word of mouth thing. You talk to somebody, they say, I heard that there was a job opening here. You go, you look at the local places that it might be advertised, you don't see anything. You go back to the person, they hook you up with somebody in that company that it says, yes, we do have an opening, but we haven't flown it. We're not going to. It's kind of a word of mouth type thing. So networking is really the only way that you're going to hear about some of those types of positions. Networking can also help you create a pool of relevant contacts who know, trust, and respect you. And it can also assist in exploring or marketing self-employed business opportunities that you're developing. And it'll also help you develop your soft skills, your communication, that type of thing. So networking is really an important thing to do when you are trying to locate a job. True or false? Include every job you've ever held when writing a resume. Now this is interesting because I'm sure the majority of you are saying false. Absolutely. You want to have that targeted resume that's only focusing on either education or experience that's directly related to the position that you are applying for. For private sector jobs, I would say absolutely. For government jobs, local, state, federal, you may want to give a little more. I work for a local government agency, and we always say, give us everything that you have. All of our positions are customer service related. We're here to serve the public. So any type of job that anyone's ever had that has to do with customer service is really relevant. So we tend to see longer resumes. And again, that's just something to do with local, state, federal government. For private sector, they want you to be much more pointed. Make sure that it is focused towards the position that you are applying for. Another thing I would tell you about resumes is if you're looking for a professional position, I highly recommend having your resume professionally done. It does cost a little bit, but it is well worth it in the end. There are many different agencies that do resume writing. Check into it. It really will polish up your application packet. A job interview is a sales presentation by the applicant. Therefore, the job seeker must sell his or her personality, potential, strengths, and experience. True or false? That is true. I like to say that the job interview is also as much an opportunity for me, the applicant, to ask questions about the agency and the position so that I know if I'm truly interested, as it is in me selling myself to them, telling them, you know, what is my potential, what are my strengths, what kind of experience do I have. That's certainly an important thing to do. I also want you to keep in mind that, you know, there's a fine line when you are trying to sell yourself to a potential employer, a fine line between confidence, positive attitude, and being arrogant. And you have to really manage that. So you do want to sell yourself. You want to come into the interview having some particular skill sets and strengths that you want to make sure that they understand. But again, you want to be sure that you're not coming across too arrogant when you're doing that. You do want your personality to shine through. We'll talk a little bit later in this presentation a little bit more about the interview process and practicing and how much that can help. True or false? The job application is considered a tool of the employer, while the resume is considered a tool of the job seeker. Yes. Now, the potential employer is only going to know information about you that you share. And your tool that you share information is that resume. That resume is a reflection of you, so it needs to be absolutely as professional as you can get it. It also needs to be error-free of any type of typos, that type of thing. It needs to be, again, very professional. The job application is a tool of the employer. It's the first test for us that you can follow directions. So again, make sure if you're filling out a job application that you're reading all of the instructions and that you are following them to a T. We kick out people every day when we are screening applications because they don't follow the directions. And the directions are the front sheet on every application that we have for my agency. And so we have a lot of people that have very good backgrounds but are not getting through the process because they're not following the application process as it is outlined. So be careful, and remember it's the first test in employment is the job application.
Hi, Sheri. It's Paula. I'm going to interrupt you. I have a couple questions. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Okay, we've got some great questions here. First one is from Matthew. Is the one-page resume relevant anymore? What I am hinting at is that I noticed that there are more two-page resumes out there, including my own, which does not include every job I've ever had?
Hi, Matthew. That's a great question. I think that there still is the old adage of a one-page resume, thinking that agencies are really busy and they're taking in so many applications that they don't want to be bogged down with pages and pages of resumes and long applications and all the attachment that goes along. But that being said, folks switch jobs much more now than they ever did in the past. And so I think having a two-page resume is not a bad thing. I don't think you need to list every single thing on there unless it's applicable, but going on to the second page, even if you had 3 pages because maybe you've been in the job market or different jobs for quite a few years, I still think that that's okay. Just make sure that they're relevant and concise. Make sure that you are noting your skills that you have on there and your education.
Thank you, Sheri. I do have another question here. Let's see, where'd you go? Oh, this is from Amal. Is there such a thing as asking too many questions?
As far as asking too many questions in the interview?
Amal, can you clarify that and just type in and let me know if that's what you're asking? Yes, in the interview. Thank you.
Yes. I think it's more of what type of questions that you ask. I think questions like, tell me, what a day would look like in this position. Is there room for advancement? Would I be using this type of skill set? Is there training? I mean, I do think there's a lot of good questions that you can ask because it shows interest in the position. And as an employer, that's really what we're looking for. We understand that folks are looking for a job, but what we're looking for on the employer side is, some passion. Why do you want to work for us? One, what do you know about us? Have you done any backgrounding? And we like to hear those types of questions that show that you're interested and that you would like to learn more and grow more in the job. Questions that, might turn the employer off, so to speak, is, where would I be sitting? Can I have a flex schedule, that type of thing. So you really want to keep those questions related to the job and show that you're interested in exactly what the job does. Other questions, Paula? No? Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so as I was just talking as part of the question, as far as job searching, people on average have 5 to 7 careers now. That's quite a change from many years ago when, baby boomers would come into a job and work a job for, 25 or 30 years. People now change jobs about every 3 or 4 years, and I think even newer workers, the millennials, that type of thing, they're even changing more often than that. So because we're changing so much, or we're anticipating changing, it's important that we know how to conduct a job search. We've got to know how to do it. Same thing as we've got to know how to interview. If we are going to rely on an interview to get a job, we've got to be good at it. So practice is really going to make a difference. So as far as an agenda for some steps for a successful job search, we're going to talk about a few more things. We're going to talk about how to organize, how to research, how to network, how to pace ourselves, how to be prepared, definitely some about follow-through and persistence, because it absolutely does take persistence when you're in a job search. So for organizing, we've got to step back and we've got to think about some things. We've got to identify our career and our life goals, values, and objectives. What are we looking for? Are we looking for a short-term job? Are we looking for a long-term job? Are we looking for benefits? Are we looking for salary? Where do I want to work? Do I want to work locally in the area that I live? Am I willing to relocate? Because sometimes that's a big advantage in finding another job. And then what do I value in my work? Do I want to be appreciated? Do I want to be challenged? Do I want to be able to move up the ranks? We really need to do some thoughts behind what exactly we're looking for. We also need to be very honest and look at our strengths, our weaknesses, our skills, and our abilities. And I strongly recommend writing those down. And I also recommend talking to those that are close to you, family, friends, and helping with you. Sometimes when you look at your own self, it's hard to articulate or think about exactly what your strengths are, because what some people think your strengths are may not be what you think. So get some assistance in that area. So we need to have that well thought out. We also need to get some things ready, because if we're going to go out and look for a job, we need to have a rock-solid resume. Again, I strongly recommend having it professionally done. Also, a cover letter. I've heard many questions over my years doing recruitment that a cover letter is outdated. That is definitely not true. I can tell you that will differentiate you from other candidates. Most folks do not put in cover letters now, and so it will be something that will have you stand outside of the pack. Also, a reference page, letters of recommendation. Should you have letters of recommendation, and if so, how far back? The ideal thing is probably to have them, anywhere from 1 to about 5 or 6 years. If you've worked for the same company for a really long time, it might make sense that you have some older than that. But letters of recommendation can be very powerful. Also, a nice portfolio, having something together with your resume, cover letter, reference page. Your portfolio can also have examples of your work. I a lot of times give the example of if you're going for a big-time accountant position, that you might bring in some type of project that you've created, some very complicated spreadsheets, that type of thing. That could be part of your portfolio. And certainly we want to have some polished interviewing skills. How do we get polished interviewing skills? If I could see you raise your hands, which I can't, but I like to ask, how many people enjoy interviewing? Generally not one single person raises their hand. And even though we don't enjoy it, we still need to be able to do it, and we need to be able to do it effectively. The only way that you can do it effectively is to practice. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along. So step 2, we need to research our market. Yes?
I'm sorry, I'm going to, if I may interrupt you again, we've got some more questions.
Absolutely, absolutely.
First, I want to share something with everybody. This is from Aisha Gori. She's with the Chicago School Career Services, and she shared that Career Services works with students, alumni directly to review resumes, CVs, and offer feedback and suggestions per industry employer demands. Thank you for sharing that, Aisha. And it's Professor Grant also typed that in the chat room. And also from Jason, which I also typed in the chat room, he shared that federal jobs through usajobs.gov recommend as much detail as possible. Some resumes extend beyond 5 to 6 pages in length. Thank you very much, both of you, for sharing that. One question from Iris. What is a good recommendation for a resume length?
Again, I would probably say anywhere from 1 to 3 pages. Again, you want to be concise. You want to have your resume be powerful, that it's really explaining your background, your experience, your education, and what your skill sets are. I appreciate Jason's comment about the 5 or 6 pages. I've seen as many for government jobs as 17 or 18 page resume, and the application being very extensive. But for most jobs, I would say probably 1 to 3 pages.
Great, thank you, Sheri. While I've got you, I have a couple more questions.
Sure, absolutely.
This is from Janitu. I have a bachelor's in public health, and I'm currently pursuing a master's in counseling psychology. However, my work experience has been in sales, marketing, and customer service. How can I change career path to reflect my degrees?
That's a great question. You're well on your way with the education. I mean, there are many positions that you're going to get your foot in the door just with that education, especially with the master's degree. I think you're still going to want to list your background as far on your resume in order to gain some experience in the actual field that you're at, you might even look at internships or also volunteer work, because that's something that can be very effective on a resume as well and can count as experience.
Thank you, Sheri. That's a great point, because some programs do require field experience or an internship, and please remember to include those on your resume, because those employees do look at that. So thank you. Good piece of advice. We have another question from Tashima. Do you think it is a good or bad idea to start in an entry-level position unrelated to my desired field just to get my foot in the door? For example, I have a master's in IO psychology with no experience, starting off entry-level in sales.
I do think it is a good idea if you're trying to get into a particular agency. Many times people will take the very first job that they can get to get into that agency. If you're not so worried about what particular agency that you're working in, then I would say probably continue to look and see if you can get into something that's more along the lines of what you're looking for and what your degree is in. But again, if it's for a particular agency, and I mean, I'll give you an example. I mean, if you're trying to get into a government agency, we have folks all the time that take the first job that they can get. And you know, their dream may be to be a clinician, but they take a job as an eligibility worker. And so once their foot's in the door, that's when they can really expand that networking. They get to know folks, people get to know their background, and sometimes when you're in, it's much easier to move around and move up. Make sense?
Yes, that's very good. Thank you, Sheri. And if I can just add to what you shared, another way to get your foot in the door is, for example, say you wanted to go work in human resource and there are no human resource jobs open. There may be a job open for a receptionist in human resource where you're not actually doing HR work, but at least you're getting your foot in the door by applying and hopefully obtaining the receptionist job. So think about creative ways like that to help you. Okay, Sheri, we've got questions pouring in.
Absolutely.
I'm going to actually let you go through this slide, and then we'll ask some more questions, okay?
Okay, sounds great.
Thanks.
So back to researching the market. Okay, we know we need a job. How do we find it? Where are the jobs at? There are some different methods that you can use. You can use the web. I think the internet is absolutely the most amazing thing when you're looking for jobs. Researching through the internet makes things so much easier. You're able to locate all types of search engines. It really does help. You can also go to local libraries, newspapers. A lot of folks are doing, online. There are some professional journals that are used especially for different positions like psychologists and psychiatrists and that type of thing, where they're flying their positions pretty exclusively in those professional journals. So if you have a degree in those types of areas, you may want to explore that. Also, some telephone and online directories. You can go to some county workforce centers. A lot of times they've got like a one-stop center where you can go in and they help with some employment searches. You can go to the Chamber of Commerce. They also will fly different types of positions for local businesses. You can go to government agencies where they have job flyers. They list all of the positions generally that they are recruiting for, not only on their website but generally in person. You can also attend job fairs. I strongly recommend that. Job fairs are a really good way to network as well. I mentioned the internet. You can certainly do some social media things such as LinkedIn. I strongly recommend everyone sign up for LinkedIn. It is a really good way to locate different positions and also meet folks that work in the same type of field that you work in or want to work in. A little more with networking.
Okay.
You got more questions?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent.
Yes, thank you, everybody. These are great, and some great statements in here. Just a couple of statements, one from Colette. Counselors can gain experience as a trainee while you're in school depending on the requirements of your state. That's a great idea, Colette. So check your local government offices to see what type of internships they might have available for you. And then another one from Colette, for counseling experience, talk to your professors. Most of them are therapists. Another good point. Thank you, Colette. Okay, question from Maria. Can you give suggestions for people with disabilities? And Maria, I'm going to assume that you mean that with regards to job search.
That's correct, according to Job Search?
Yes, she hasn't said no, so.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Maria.
As far as folks with disabilities, I think that, the internet certainly allows you to do job searches that way. So many agencies and companies now are using all of these different search engines, and that's how they're applying their positions. I think that that's one way. LinkedIn absolutely is a great way that you can hook up with things like that where you don't have to go in person necessarily. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you, Sheri, very much. Okay, we have one here from Howie. I have a PhD in business psychology, but lack the number of years of experience required for many of the jobs I'm interested in. What are some ways I can get the experience I need without taking on jobs that aren't challenging?
As far as experience, I definitely would do internships. I would do volunteer work. I would try to find jobs that are, as Paula said, even gonna in the agency that might get you the experience, but maybe you take a job that is the receptionist or a position that's underneath that, so that you can at least get your foot in the door and try to transition into one of those types of positions that would get you the experience that you need. You can also contact a lot of agencies that will tell you that they don't have formal internship programs, but if you approach them and that you have interest and it's in an area that they feel an internship would make sense for them, they'll put it together. We have done that in my agency, and it's worked out really well. We hadn't done them for years and years and years. So again, be proactive and see if you can volunteer that way, get some internships going.
Great. Thank you very much, Sheri. Why don't you go ahead and move on, please? Thanks.
Continuing with the networking piece, you want to identify people who could provide company information and referrals, because people are going to call. Employers are going to call for referrals when you are offered a position. So you want to make sure that you've got some good referrals on your application and resume. You can't have family. Ideally, you want past employers. You want some professional organizations. Alumni works really well. Faculty and staff. They can really provide some excellent referrals. So you want to have a good solid, probably 3 or maybe even 5 on your resume or application. You also, as far as the networking, you want to create a list of employers of interest. So are there companies that you would love to work for, that it's your dream to work for them, that it's in the area that you want to work in, they do the type of work that you do? Make a list and then contact those specific companies for jobs. Maybe they have, say, even job interest cards where they're not necessarily recruiting at that point, but you fill out a job interest card, and then when positions come available that are in the area that you are interested in, they will actually contact you, and you won't miss the recruitment then. You can also talk to them about internship opportunities. If they say, no, we don't do internships, you can say, hey, have you ever thought about doing it? I'm interested. You could hook them up with the college and see if they can get something set up that way. Step 4, pace yourself. Again, you're probably not going to find a job tomorrow. You might, but sometimes it takes some time. So you've got to pace yourself, okay? You want to do a couple of different things. You want to make sure that you're calling back, you're checking back, you're logging your contacts, your interviews. Again, you've got to be organized. You want to develop some short and long-term action plans. Some of the things that come into play there is if you're long-term plan, say, is to be a counselor somewhere, but you're just having a hard time, you may want to start applying for other positions that are maybe right underneath the counselor and see if you can get your foot in the door that way. Or you might want to expand the different agencies, the different types of things that you're looking at for jobs, so that you're getting more applications out there. You want to also obtain some feedback from others. And this can be for two different things. The feedback can be for your application and your resume. So have somebody take a look at that. Family, friends, maybe somebody professional, maybe one of your instructors if they're willing to do that, and have them give you some feedback on that. Many times when we write something we feel like it's perfect, it's exactly how we want it to be, and we just don't see the things that are missing. So have somebody look at it. Also, get some feedback from interviews if you can do that. It can be tricky, but if you interview at an agency and you do not get the job, please contact them and just say, hey, I would love some interview pointers. I'd like to do better next time. Could I obtain some feedback? That can be very helpful. If you're going on a lot of interviews and you're not getting any job offers, there may be something that you're doing as far as part of the interview that is off-putting to the panel or the folks that are interviewing. So having some feedback would be really good. And then again, review and adjust your objectives as needed. If you're constantly going out, you're applying, you're not hearing anything back, you're not getting any interviews, you're going to have to rethink where you're applying, maybe what you're applying for, and change it up a little bit. Okay, so now we've been invited to the interview, so we're going to prepare for the interview. One of the things that I don't have on here that I should have added is it's really important to background the agency that you're going to go for. That's one of the things that really sets you apart from other candidates. What does the agency do? How big is it? What type of programs do they do? Any information that you can get about them that you can even share a couple of tidbits about that at the interview is going to be a positive for you. And a lot of times you can get the majority of that information off that agency's website. If you can't get it off the website, contact them directly. Hey, could I possibly talk to somebody that works in that department or that does that type of position? That will really help you and educate you on exactly what that agency does. Also for the interview, decide on the clothes that are going to give you that professional look. Now, it depends on what you're interviewing for, of course. If you were interviewing for, you know, the supervising road maintenance person, I mean, you're not going to wear a suit. But if you're interviewing for a clinician position or a psychologist or something like that, you're going to want to have that professional attire. You're definitely going to want to practice your interview skills. Schedule a practice interview with somebody. I generally recommend starting with a family member because that makes you feel the most comfortable at first. Have them prepare some questions, or you prepare some questions and have them ask you the questions. You can also watch expert advice on how to answer interview questions. You can go onto the internet, you can Google that, you can watch YouTube videos. There's all kinds of stuff that has to do with interview questions and how to be an effective interviewer. But the best thing that I think helps is honestly the practicing. And again, you can do that in front of a family member, you could do it in front of a coworker. I also recommend, and sometimes people get a little uneasy, but is to video yourself. Do a practice interview, video yourself. That way you can watch how you're answering the questions and see if there's something that you need to change. If there's some mannerisms that you need to change, you'll be able to see those yourself. So when you go to the interview, what are you going to bring? Some people come in, they don't bring anything. I highly recommend bringing in extra resumes because sometimes your resume may have changed from when you submitted it. There are agencies that it takes them a long time once you've applied for them to screen the applications and then actually bring you in for the interview. So there's potentially things could have changed. So bring in an extra updated resume. I would also make sure you have about 3 copies because a lot of places interview with 2 or 3 panel members. You also want to have a reference page, you want to have a professional pen, and you want to have questions for the interviewer. Your reference page, I like to see it separate, and I like to see about 3 or 5, and with contact information, both email and phone contact information. And then as far as questions for the interviewer, we talked earlier about, asking questions about the job. I mean, that shows interest. You can definitely do that. Tell me a day in the life of this position. What would I be doing? That shows interest. You can also ask questions about when might you decide on this? Are there going to be second interviews? That type of thing. You always want to make sure that you have a few questions prepared. Follow through.
Can you take a few questions now, Sheri?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to share with everybody that I did post the career services information in the chat box, so you have some information to contact the Chicago School Career Services. And I wanted to share from Aisha Gori, who is part of the Career Services. She's stating, I would be happy to offer a session. We host a practice interview software online that allows people to record themselves answering questions. The recording can be reviewed by the individual or shared with us for a peer for feedback. The tool is called Interview Stream, and we host webinars regularly on this topic and more. That's great to know. So everybody, if you have questions about that, please contact Career Services. And again, I put the contact information in the chat box. Career Services also offers a video interview service, so that's wonderful. Aisha, thank you so much.
That's amazing.
Right, well, I know, huh?
Yes.
A couple of questions, one from Tashunda. What is a good way to gain notice when applying for online jobs? For example, my current lifestyle requires freedom of movement, and a remote position seems more realistic for me at this time.
Can you read me the question one more time? I'm sorry, Paul.
Sure, I'd be happy to. What is a good way to gain notice when applying for online positions? For example, my current lifestyle requires freedom of movement, and a remote position seems more realistic for me at this time. So it appears this is somebody, and I'm sure she's not alone, is looking to kind of narrow down the job search to remote positions. How would she go about making sure that she gets recognized even though applying online?
Yeah, that's a challenge. I know there are agencies now that are promoting that more in the actual job flyer itself, that it could be a remote position, but then there's also agencies that don't do that. So I think that you would certainly want to articulate that's your desire on your resume, but again, I still think you're going to have to kind of take it on a case-by-case basis. You're going to have to look for focused recruitments that talk about working from home, remotely, that type of thing. But it'll definitely be more challenging. But I am seeing more of that than ever before.
Great, thank you, Sheri. And again, if I can just add to what you just said, there are some remote websites that only advertise virtual positions. So find those to apply for jobs there. And even though you're applying online, that doesn't mean that you can't contact the company or contact HR. So you may not be in the same area, but you can still make a presence by contacting them personally. Okay, next question. This is from Iris. What are some characteristics that make organizations stand out if you have two potential jobs that offer you the same benefits?
What are some characteristics that make the agency stand out?
Right, so let's say that I'm offered two jobs and they have the same benefits. What are your recommendations on how I should make a decision? Are there some certain characteristics in an organization that I should be aware of that would help me in making that decision?
Yes, I would look at a couple of different things. One, I would look at the stability of the company. potential for layoff or that type of thing. If it's a well-recognized company and hasn't gone through that, I would probably lean towards that. I would also maybe look at size of the company. Many larger agencies have more room for advancement. Third, I would probably talk to each of the agencies about advancement, and I would likely go with the one that's going to give me more opportunity yet more stability overall.
That's great. I like that answer. Thank you. Let's see. Are there any jobs in the psychology field that offer education programs while you work for them?
I would say yes. I can speak, for my own agency. Yes, I mean there are many. We have education where we pay for education while they're working. We also do flex schedules to allow that. We're trying to really promote upper education, the masters, the PhDs, that type of thing for our clinical staff. So that's definitely something that we do. It is paid for by the agency, by the department. There are other agencies that will also do that. When we fly physicians, we will put that in our flyer that we will pay for that. So that is something that you might want to look at when you are looking at different advertisements for different agencies. And if they don't, it doesn't hurt to call HR and ask them, hey, I'm looking for, to continue my education. Do you have any type of benefits that allow for that to happen, some flexibility as well as some payment towards education?
Great. Thank you so much, Sheri. Let's see. This is from Jamie. Can you explain more about the reference page, which probably, are they still used today, and should I always have one with me?
Yes, they are always used. Agencies should absolutely be calling and checking references. What you want to do on your reference sheet is have professional business references on there. Someone that can attest to your skill set, maybe a former employer, a former or current professor, that type of thing. You don't necessarily want to put family and friends on there because, again, they're probably just going to say whatever you tell them to say. Be careful that when you put a reference on there that you ask that person if they can be a reference and that they know that they might be contacted regarding your background. You certainly don't want them to be surprised. And you do want to have folks on there that will give you a good reference. I've done quite a few reference checks where the people that they have put on there have given negative. So be careful who you put on there. My suggestion would be to do 3 to 5. And again, with their address, their telephone number, and their email address as well.
That's great, Sheri. Seriously, people put on references that don't give them a good reference?
They do. We've done quite a few. It's amazing.
Yeah. Okay, we've got one more, but why don't you go ahead and I'll stop you on your next break. Thank you.
You got it. No problem. Okay, so as far as follow-through, certainly you want to follow up with the employer within 1 to 2 weeks of sending in your resume or your application. And how do you follow up? You can do it with a phone call. Many people are doing it by email now. If you've got the email address of, say, the panel that interviewed you, that type of thing, you can certainly do that, but I would definitely follow up with HR as well. And then you always want to send a thank you letter after the interview within 24 hours. Folks are also doing those by email, which I do think is fine as long as you're sure you have the right email address. You want to make sure that those get to them. I am a little bit old-fashioned, and I do like the old-fashioned handwritten note myself. When I sit on a panel and I receive a handwritten note, I'm always impressed that somebody took the time to do that because you just don't see that a lot. So I like that. I think other employers like that as well. And then again, follow directions and send information that the employer requests. If you were at the interview and they requested anything from you, say, I need more references, could you give me a sample of your work, We've got a couple of supplemental questions that we would like you to answer, and could you send those back to us? Please make sure that you ask when those are due and get them to them exactly when they are due. Follow through. That will help you be considered for, if there's a couple of people that they're considering, then you would be one of those. I mentioned to be persistent. Job searching takes time. It really does take time. I like to give the example of, my teenage son looking for a job. And it always made me laugh when he first started doing it, because he would literally take, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes or 3 minutes at night to look for jobs. And he would maybe go by and walk into a place once or twice a week, and then he would complain because he couldn't find a job. It takes time. It takes time every day. Again, you've got to have that plan. There are jobs out there. There are jobs out there if you really want to find them. The average search is about 4 to 6 months, and for different fields it can be shorter, it can be longer. If you're looking for a very particular job, it might take you longer. If you're more willing to take more of an entry or journey level position just to get your foot in the door, that might happen quicker. And so it really just depends on your financial situation and what you want to do. And then remember, follow-up is the key. You're always going to want to follow up on any application, resume that you've turned in. You're going to want to go into the agency. You're going to want to follow up by phone for every single one that you do. And then again, be open-minded about those potential opportunities. It might not be your dream job, but it might get you into the agency or into the area of work that you want to do. So consider it. So recapping the steps that we talked about, one, we want to get organized. So we want to have a plan as to what we're going to do. We want to get some stuff calendared. We want to research the market. Where are the jobs that we are looking for? Do we want to relocate? That type of thing. And then we're going to network and we're going to conduct informational interviews. We're going to try to talk to folks that are in the areas of the jobs that we want to learn more about them and to make sure that we do want to work in that area or we do want to work for that agency. We're going to pace ourselves and we're going to stay with it. We're going to stay the course. We're going to do a lot of preparation for the interview because honestly, it doesn't matter how good your resume and your application looks. If you bomb the interview, it's going to be real tough for you to get the position. So you've got to make sure that you can be an effective interviewer. So you've got to do that practice. And then you've got to be persistent. You've got to keep at it. I mentioned this before.
Sheri.
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you again. I apologize I just want to make sure we don't lose these questions.
Absolutely.
First from Colette, she wanted to share that she used the services of the Career Center and gained insight into her own situation and that they provide great services. Thank you, Colette, for that feedback. Let's see. A question from Amal. What quick certifications would you recommend obtaining? I'm completing my BA in psychology, but have been considering gaining a certification to add to my skills. Are there any that will make me stand out?
As far as certifications, there are just so many out there. I don't have any particular ones that I think are better than others, but certainly I think any that are relevant to the field that you're in. I mean, I can give you an example of my agency, and we've got alcohol and drug certificates, that type of thing that are beneficial. Certificates sometimes will make you stand out. It also shows initiative. It shows drive. There are employers that really do value having that additional information on there. So I think, again, whatever you can sign up for in your area of study makes sense.
Great. Thank you very much, Sheri. And just to add to that, Amal, check the job ads to see what type of certifications are in demand. That might help you choose as well. Okay, another one from Tashunda. What's the best way to follow up if the job post specifically states no calls or no emails?
That's a great question. you do see a lot of that now, no calls or no emails. You're really going to have to go there in person, or you're going to have to do it in writing. And I would suggest in person. There's nothing more irritating, I think, to an employer when they say that when they constantly get calls. So show up, which is a good thing, face-to-face. Hey, I'm here about this job. Come prepared. Come with a resume. If you've got their application, if you're able to download it, have the application filled out. Come with the whole packet. Hey, I'm interested in the job, and bring it to you. It's a nice way to meet folks face-to-face.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that was a good one, because I'm noticing that more and more as well. Okay, we have another question here from Natalia. Do employers consider candidates who are yet to graduate and obtain their degrees, say in a few months, or do they prefer candidates who have already graduated? In other words, how soon can we start applying for jobs when we're in our final year of study?
That's also a good question. There are agencies, my own included, where we have actually changed our job classifications so that we can get those folks that are almost ready to graduate. So we have language that says, you know, if you can get something from the college that you're on track to graduate, then you can go ahead and apply for the position. So you can look for that type of language, but when in doubt, I would go ahead and apply. If you're close, just note on the application or the resume when you are going to graduate. Many agencies, it takes them a while to get through their process. So if you wait thinking, okay, well, I don't have my degree yet, but it takes them several months to actually contact you for the next step in the process, by that time you might have already had your degree, so then you've missed out on an opportunity. So I say when in doubt, go ahead and apply.
Great, Sheri. Thank you so much. We do have more questions, but I'd like you to continue on with your information. Thank you.
Sounds good. I mentioned earlier that there's always jobs out there. There really is. You will hear folks say, I can't find jobs. You're not looking hard enough. There are jobs out there, but finding them depends on you. You've got to put the effort into doing it. I wanted to include, because so many folks are looking for jobs online, again, the internet is such a powerful tool, that the top 10 job sites for 2015, if you haven't hooked up with any of these or checked any of these out, I strongly suggest that you do so. You'll see Career Builder, Dice.com, Glassdoor.com, Idealist.com, Indeed, LinkedIn, LinkUp, Monster, Simply Hired, and US Jobs. Now, a lot of these, when employers put their jobs, their vacancies on here, they will filter into other search engines as well. So once you get on a couple of these big ones, you're going to see lots of different jobs. So I strongly suggest, if you haven't checked out some of these, to try them. Some of the least effective ways to find a job would be to mail out resumes. I think that's sort of an old school thing. You do see folks still do it. Most agencies now require an application, not just the resume. So just mailing your resumes out is not going to do you any good. As far as answering ads in professional or trade journals, it's kind of low. Professional trade journals, you don't see a lot of that unless it's at a very high level or a very specific trade. So occasionally that can work, but you're not going to see a ton of advertisements in those. And then answering non-local newspaper ads, that's a low way, 10%. And answering actually newspaper ads, anywhere from 5 to 24%. In the agency that I work in, we did an analysis on newspaper, because we were spending a ton of money advertising in local newspapers. And when we did our analysis, we were able to identify that we had like 1% of the people that we were hiring were coming off of these newspaper ads. The majority of people that we were hiring were coming off of internet search engines or our specific website. So you may not want to waste a whole lot of time in newspaper ads. Also, going to private employment agencies, fairly low as far as an effective way to find a job. especially if you're looking for a particular type of job in a particular area. A lot of times a private employment agency is going to just send you to pretty much any agency that has any type of opening, and that may not be what you're looking for. Some more effective ways to find a job is to ask for job leads. You know, it's kind of a who you know type thing. You're going to do that networking. That works out really well. And then actually knocking on the door of the prospective employer. Go to that agency. Go to that agency regularly. Check in. Let them get to know you. Drop off your application, your resume. When a vacancy finally does come open, they're going to absolutely know that you're interested and hopefully you get a call. And then a creative approach to job hunting. That can be different for different people. That can be networking. It can be going in person. It can be a lot of different things. You really have to be creative in finding those types of jobs, and it takes some work. If you need help, I know there's been a lot of talk on some of these questions here about the Career Center there. And the Career Center at colleges do really provide excellent services as far as job hunting and polishing up your resume and your application. They generally work pretty closely with a lot of the companies, agencies in the area. They know a lot about internships and volunteer work. And so I think it's just a really good place to start.
Thank you, Sheri. Appreciate all the information you shared with us. So if we could please just go over all the questions that are sitting here.
Sure, of course.
Thank you. And everybody, if this is the question and answer period, we have about 20 minutes left. So if you have questions, please type them in and we'll read them off to Sheri. Okay, the first one is from Jonatu. If the job offers that I'm getting are not in line with my future career goals, yet they provide excellent general skills, should I accept those offers anyway while I wait?
I would say yes. Yes, because having a job while you're looking, I think, is always beneficial, and it's giving you additional experience. So definitely, if that falls in with your financial situation, yes.
Great, thank you, Sheri. From Colette, can you give me some pointers on discussing salary? I've been offered a job with a new business. I come with excessive experience and education. They are interested in my skill set.
That is a great question, and that can be challenging because, one, you want the job and you don't, so it can be, again, challenging. When you want to talk about salary, generally they're flying the position with a salary. So a lot of times it's a range, and they might bring you in at the lower part of the range. You feel like your experience warrants a higher level. You want to be able to articulate to the hiring panel or the manager exactly why you believe that you should come in at an advanced step or salary. Come in with, this is my education. This is what's above and beyond what maybe the minimum qualifications for that position are. I come with 10 years of experience in this, this, this. Be very specific about the skill set that you're bringing. And, if you're potentially leaving a job that maybe is, very close to that, or maybe is making more than that, that's something else that you want to bring up, that it would be potentially a pay cut. You are interested in the opportunity, but do believe that your skill set and your background would warrant a advanced step, and see if they would consider doing that. If they say they can't do it at this time, you might also talk to them about, if I get into the job and I'm doing an exceptional job after a certain period of time, is there the opportunity for me to get increases earlier rather than later?
Thank you, Sheri. I'd like to ask a question, just kind of follow up on this question. because if somebody goes into a job while looking for another job, what I was thinking of, what in your professional opinion is too many jobs on a resume? I mean, if somebody's job hopping, what's your recommendation about that? And I mean, if somebody's job hopping every year, does that look bad on a resume? What's an appropriate amount of time to stay with an employer?
It can look bad. I think you see it much more now with newer workers, younger workers, because they're moving around much more. And they're moving around for a couple of different things. They're moving for salary, they're moving for flexibility in schedules, working from home, that type of thing. So I think you really need to look, the employer really has to look at what are the reasons why that person is moving around. Now, if you've moved, you know, pretty much every year for the last 10 years, that is a red flag for an employer. Because as the employer, I mean, we generally spend a lot of time training our folks, a lot of money, a lot of time, and so we want to keep you. And when we see you jumping around, you know, every year, again, that could make it to where if it's between you and another candidate, that we go with the other candidate that doesn't maybe have that type of background. So if for some reason you do have that in your background, I would articulate the reasons why you've moved around so much.
Great, and we have a follow-up question to that from Colette. What about professional ethics? For example, if I take a job knowing that I'm likely not going to stay, does that hurt my reputation?
No, because I think employers now just realize that folks are moving around a lot more. They're moving around for a lot of different reasons. They're moving around for flexibility, for pay, for more challenging work, for a position in the field where the person really wants to be. So I don't think so. I think, you know, being open and honest, if, you know, something comes up and you're going to need to interview, I think that you should, you know, share that with your employer and be upfront with them on that.
Great, thank you. This is a question from Hallie. Should I include independent contract work on my resume, or would it be a concern or red flag for hiring managers?
No, I absolutely would include it, and I don't think it would be a red flag at all. I think the different types of work that you do in the different types of arenas can be very beneficial. I know when we are doing some hiring and we see both public and private sector and contract work and that type of thing, that's something that we, that's a benefit for us.
Great, thank you, Sheri. Let me just, before I lose it on my screen, just another heads up about the Chicago School Career Center. Career Services posts jobs through their online job board, the Career Hub, and I did post that in the online chat for everybody. Okay, another question here. In your opinion, how would you word or bring up being fired on a resume, even if it was on a technicality?
Good question. Again, you want to be honest, so I don't think I would use the term fired. I would maybe say separated. I'm not even sure I would use terminated, possibly, but probably more like separated employment. And then you could say, you know, we'll give details at the interview. What you don't want to do is put a lot of information about that, like on your resume or your application, or where we see it a lot of times is on the, if they do a cover letter, they'll explain exactly why they were fired, and they go into too much detail. So I would save it a little bit for the interview process.
Okay, that was a good question. I don't know that I've ever interviewed somebody that actually told me they were fired. Just to follow up, this question was from Jason. He's stating, so be honest, but with minimal detail. Is that what you're sharing, Sheri?
Yeah, I would. I mean, you want a little bit of detail because you don't want to give the perception that you're hiding it, but you don't want to go into extensive detail on the application or resume. I've seen people say, we'll discuss at the interview. And they'll put just a couple of reasons, professional differences or ethical differences or, whatever the basic reason is, and just put that in the box and then say you'll talk about it later. And then be prepared at the interview for them to ask you, hey, let's talk about this. There are many people that have been let go from jobs, and sometimes it's for a very good reason.
That's a good point, Sheri, because not every involuntary separation means that the former employee did something wrong. There could be several reasons. So I think honesty is the best policy. Now, while I'm waiting for any other questions, we have about 10 minutes left. I kind of have a question. Do you think that some employers look at the school from which you obtain a degree and take that into consideration when making hiring decisions? What are your thoughts on that?
I do think that some managers do. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say maybe an agency as a whole, but I have worked myself with different managers that do take that into consideration. I've also worked with managers that look at folks' grades, and if they don't get what they consider acceptable grades, then they're not going to move them through in the process. So I think it can really depend on the hiring manager that's doing it. I think any college education that's listed is given, some recognition for sure. Others probably hold more weight with some folks than others.
And that brings another thing to mind for all the students out there. Do you look at a GPA and make a hiring decision based on someone's GPA?
I don't, but I have seen managers that really do put weight in that. You'll see agencies that say, please attach your transcripts and your grades. And sometimes when they do that, that's because they are looking at that type of thing. For the most part, the agencies that I've worked with or seen, it's really just attach your degree. You need a degree from an accredited college, and that's all that's needed.
Thank you. I have some more questions that came in while I was getting mine answered.
Great, great.
From Tashunda. If a relevant position is listed on your resume for a company that was purchased by another company, is there a way potential employers can still verify your employment for the former company?
Yeah, sometimes if you have the right kind of contact information on there. So it's hard for us to figure that out sometimes, but if you leave a number with somebody that maybe is now at the agency or somebody that formerly worked for the agency and you still have the contact information and you can provide that, then I would definitely do that.
Okay, thank you. I'm typing your responses in as you state them. So, here's such great questions. Can you discuss the best ways to use Craigslist for job searching? I heard that there are some false ads.
There are many false ads, and Craigslist, it amazes me how much it's used. We have started using it probably within the last year. When we first started talking about doing it, I thought it was crazy because I just didn't think that people would look for a job on Craigslist. I thought you would look to buy a couch or get a dog or, that kind of thing. But we've had pretty good success, and I think it's because a lot of people just look to Craigslist for a lot of things. So you do have to be careful. You want to look for advertisements that list, the name of the business, the address of the business, a contact number, maybe even a contact name. You don't want any kind of weird wording or that type of thing because it may not be legitimate. But for example, we fly for extra help like behavioral health counselors, and we do it on Craigslist all the time. We also do extra help nurses and that type of thing, and our ad looks very legitimate, just like it would on our own website.
Great, Sheri, thank you. Yes, I've actually seen Butte County advertise for jobs on Craigslist, so I think it's viable as long as you do make sure that it's a viable company, a real company.
I thought it was crazy, but it works.
Yes. A question from Justin. What is the best way to ask for a raise, especially when the manager that hired you promised to give you one after a certain period of time, but that manager is no longer there?
I think what you don't want to do is go into your new manager and say that your former manager promised you a raise and you're here and you would like to have it. I think you want to come in with a list of maybe accomplishments, things that you have done since you've been there, goals that you've hit, why you believe that you should receive a raise, and just have those be very specific and have backup documentation as to why you believe you should get one. And I do think that you should be straightforward and set a meeting with the manager and talk to them about it.
That's great. I think I'm going to use that with my boss tomorrow. And I'm sure Ellen's laughing at me too. Okay, question from Janatu. How would a sales background merge with a counseling psychology degree? And how do I convey my interest in counseling while my experiences are primarily in a different area?
I think sales, how I look at it is sales is all about customer service, and you have that public contact. You're also dealing in sales with maybe hard to get along with people. And that's something that a counselor would also do. So they're providing service publicly, they're dealing with difficult customers, and I would just relate that type of sales background to the position that you're looking for that your degree in psychology has. So say like a counselor position. I do think it's applicable.
Great, thank you, Sheri. Let's see. From Yana, does it make a difference to an employer whether the degree was obtained online?
No, not anymore. So many folks get degrees online now that it's just very, very common. I don't see any difference now between online and on ground.
Okay, great. I have a follow-up question from Tashima. To piggyback on the previous question, what if the company no longer exists? Do I still put it on my resume?
Yes, I would. And again, if you happen to know anybody that was your supervisor or manager and you could provide personal contact information, that would be helpful. But as an employer, we realize that companies sell, things change, and there are going to be employers that maybe we're not able to contact. So what offsets that sometimes is if you have in your packet a letter of recommendation maybe from somebody from that company that maybe you got previously, so that might be helpful.
Great, Sheri, thank you. Another question from Jason. What information, advice can you give for people looking for jobs in different states?
In different states. You can still use the same search engine, so you're still going to be able to locate a lot of positions in the area or the field that you're looking for. You want to keep in mind that if you're a finalist for a position, you're probably going to have to fly there. So monetarily, you're going to have to think about that. Many agencies will allow you to do Skype interviews for the first round of interviews. And if there's testing, they might even have, remote testing, that type of thing. But as far as being a finalist, you're probably going to have to go there. And then I would definitely articulate, why you want to relocate, give them the reasons why.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions out there? Let me just send this one. There we go. Here we go from Laura. I'm not sure if this would apply to this topic. I work as a trial consultant and we outsource some of our jury consulting work to a psychologist. I would love to do internship work with her. However, when I finish everything, I will basically replace her. Ooh, how do you approach reaching out to somebody regarding assisting you in this type of case where you're going to be replacing that person at some point?
That is a tough question. I think that you could still talk to them about, I mean, it's probably going to depend on the personality of that person and if they're willing to do that. I still think you ask them, let them know that you would like to do that, and just see how it goes from there. See if they're interested.
Okay, thank you, Sheri. I'm not sure if this was answered before, but I'd still like to ask it. Does having a degree from online versus on campus hurt?
No, I don't think it hurts anymore. I think as much weight is given to online, again, because so many folks are doing online now. And as long as it's from an accredited college and you have transcripts and that type of thing, no.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we just, Jean, to add it to this, would online campus hurt your chances of getting a job? Do you think employers are biased and more in favor of the traditional campus education?
No, I actually don't think so, because in talking to a lot of managers, there's a real appreciation by a lot of managers for folks that do online college, because the majority of people that do online college also work. And so sometimes they work full-time, sometimes they work part-time. So it really shows, you know, initiative. It shows that you're a hard worker. And I think that they really appreciate that. And so no, I don't think it hurts at all.
Okay, this will have to be the last question because we're running out of time. Let me share some final statements. Thank you for your time, Sheri. Very helpful. Now, a question from Iris. How do you use references that are professionals and your friends, especially when you worked there for many years? If they're a professional reference, even though you're friends, you could definitely still do that. Sometimes the reference will say that you're personal friends as well, and but generally they'll talk about the background and, you know, that you worked together, and, you know, then eventually you became friends. But they're able to attest to your skill set and the type of work that you do for them. So you do want it to be professional, but, you know, managers realize that folks that work together for a long time end up, you know, many times being friends as well. Okay, thank you, Sheri. Just one last quick question now from Laura. Do you have to put on your resume that you received your degree online?
No, you do not. You would just list on your resume the school that your degree came from, and there's no need for you to say that it's online.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any more questions. If anybody has any final comments, if you do have more questions, I can always share these with Sheri after the webinar, and we can get the answers to you. Sheri, thank you so much. Any final words for our students?
Just, keep at it. If you're looking for jobs, you will find something, and you will find something in the field that you're working in. You've worked really hard to obtain your degrees, and again, there's a lot of jobs out there, so don't give up. If you have specific questions, about your own situation that you'd like to ask me, certainly funnel those through Paula. I'm absolutely happy to answer any questions that you have, and it was a pleasure participating. I thank you so much for having me.
Well, we greatly appreciate your time, Sheri. I know how busy you are. And just a reminder to everybody that we do have the Chicago School Career Services available to you. I did put the contact information in the chat. So please contact them. That's a resource that's available to you, so please use it. And Sheri, I'm just getting some comments I'd like to share with you from Jonatu. Thank you, this was insightful. From Dennis, great webinar, thank you. From Hallie, thanks Sheri, excellent presentation. From Rafal, thank you Sheri, your webinar was very inspiring. From Aisha, who is with Career Services, thank you Sheri. And from Professor Grant, Sheri is an excellent presenter and so full of information. From Grant, thank you so much, great information. And again, my thanks to you. Greatly appreciate your time, and thank you to everybody for joining us on the call this evening. You will receive a copy of the presentation as well as the recording. Have a good rest of your evening, everybody. Study hard.